for the last 3 cohorts, and I'm here to help you get through and succeed in the careers part of careers in code. So Max is going to get you with the 90% code part, but if you want to get jobs, you have to also do the career part. So I'm here to help you with resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, searching for jobs, what to look for, where to find them, and how to build your portfolio, all of that fun stuff. So I'm going to go over who I am, where to find these assignments, when you're supposed to turn them in, and then just kind of what it takes, who gets hired out of this program, because you're all here to find jobs, right? So you want to keep this in mind from the beginning. I will also get to meet all of you. We're going to have some group meetings and one-on-ones. I need to meet with every one of you to find out sort of what got you here and where you want to go after this, so that I can help look out for resources for you and help point you in the right direction. So I have a background in coding that goes way, way back. When I was a teenager, I used to build websites. When I was a mid-younger age person, I built websites. I still build websites. I have done programming through some of my career work, and I don't actually work in too much code right now, but I still understand it pretty well. And when I was like 20 years old, I moved to Ireland to build a CRM that I had programmed and coded and built the database and backend for. And I didn't pursue that as a career because I didn't see a path for myself. 20 years ago, there were not a lot of women who would have been in this room, and this room wouldn't have existed. So I ended up putting that down and deciding I wanted to work outdoors and getting into biology. So I just sort of switched gears, but I was able to succeed in my career as an environmental scientist because of my background in databases and programming. So it's a skill that regardless of where you go from here, if you take it to heart, you'll be able to bring this. Not a lot of people have this knowledge. So this is something that regardless of what industry you go into can be beneficial in the next place that you land. So you have some assignments for career coaching, but they are not like your weekly assignments you get from coding. So we tried pushing career homework on everyone during the coding part of the boot camp, and that was really difficult for a lot of people. You're going to find that in the first couple of weeks, you're like, ah, I got this. I can do all of these things. And you might make some progress on your career homework, but then around week 5, 6, you'll stop. Most people stop, and we're not here to stress you out that bad. And if you don't learn to code, then you won't be able to get a career in this area. So that's the priority. But we still need to make sure that this is accounted for. So you will have assignments that will show up in Canvas in the next week. Those will have due dates on them. They're suggested due dates if you want to finish the boot camp with all of your career stuff done. If you finish the last week of boot camp is when we're going to go through everything in person, whether it's in Zoom or actually in person, but we'll go over all of the assignments that you had to build your resume or cover letter. So if you didn't get to any of it by the last week, we're going to catch you up. So if you are inclined, if you have the time, some of you work, some of you don't. So you all have different scenarios. Those of you who have the time, if you want to knock this out and get it done too. If you want to get it done in the next 2 weeks, so you have it done before the end, good for you. That's great. The assignments have to do with your resume and your cover letter. You'll send me a draft. I'll make updates. You'll send me a final. We'll make more updates. That'll be for resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn. Your portfolio, we'll work on more towards the end. To graduate, you need to submit an action plan, and that will talk about the different activities, the promises you make to yourself and to us that you will continue to submit applications, work on your resume, keep networking, keep doing all these skills that we've taught you. And that will just help you to make sure that when careers in code is over and you don't have this lifeline anymore, that you have a plan in front of you. So you don't have to worry too much about this. I post in the Career Coach channel on Slack once a week. So make sure that you are subscribed to that channel. Those will start probably not next week while you're still getting acquainted, but maybe the week after. And there'll be reminders there of what assignments are going on. There'll be reminders there for actually links to articles, things about your job search, things about things to help you get through careers in code. I've written quite a few blog articles. I'll reshare those so that you have those to read through that will help you figure out all of the things about applying and where to apply and how to write your cover letter and all of that. Each assignment has a module associated with it, which is a YouTube video. Those are saved on YouTube in the Hack Upstate YouTube page under a playlist for career coaching. And there's links to all this will be in Canvas. Everything will be submitted and shared with you. So make sure you're following the Career Coach channel in Slack so you get access to those things. The last week of class will be September 18th to 21st. It will be here before you know it. So sadly, summer that's just starting will be coming to an end. But I will swap out with Max and I'll spend an entire week with you to go through everything that you might have missed. If you did happen to stay on top of everything and you were done the week before that and I've signed off on it, you don't have to come. So you can have an extra week off, an extra week to work on your capstone project, which I promise you'll want. So if you're able to stay on top of the suggested deadlines for the Career Coach assignments, I suggest it, but if you don't sweat it. Like I said, we did that to the first cohort I was with, and in hindsight, it's better to just let you focus on the coding parts. You'll get enough stress there, I promise you. The other element that we have is mock interviews. So one of the other challenges is having a group of people complete a really hard boot camp that they're able to do quietly, shyly, silently, and then send you off into the world and you're too afraid to have an interview talking about your new skills or even how to do that. So we have a high emphasis also on participating and practicing in some mock interviews, and we'll be able to schedule those with you. If I'm meeting with you and you're like, I want to do a mock interview, we'll find you someone to do that with. You can do mock interviews with Max. There's a whole program that we're rolling out, so you can do self interviews or you can schedule to do with Max. And more info will come out on those. So again, following the Career Coach channel, and we'll keep you posted on that. But it is something that we do expect you to participate in. Again, not week 1, not week 2, but as we get closer to the end, for sure. And you'll be glad that you did. One of the early requirements is to meet with me, as I said earlier. And so I'm going to schedule a couple of group meetings so that we can meet like this, and I can just talk to you about your experiences and what your interests are and any questions you might have about the career elements of this program. And if you're not able to make those, we can schedule one-on-ones. And then you can also schedule one-on-ones with me anytime throughout the program. If you've met someone who's like, hey, you should get into this and you want to talk about it, feel free to meet with me. If you're feeling really heavy into the imposter syndrome and you're like, I don't know that I'll ever be able to find something, schedule a one-on-one with me and we'll talk about it. So I'm always here to do that. The easiest way is just to connect and message me on Slack, and we'll just pick a date that works for you, daytime. And the other thing that I'm doing is I'm watching you. So when we talk about getting hired in careers, it's not just about passing this boot camp. It's about participating in this boot camp and showing us that you're a hireable person. I can't in good faith recommend any one of you that I haven't ever met, or that I haven't had a conversation with, or that I don't know what you're interested in, or who didn't show up when they were supposed to show up. We all are going to miss meetings. I do it too. This program happens fast, and sometimes meetings are scheduled on the fly, and all of us have crazy schedules and different things going on in our lives. That's totally fine. But telling somebody, hey, I need to reschedule, or oops, I'm sorry, I missed this, something came up, that stuff is important. If you can demonstrate to us that you have good communication skills, and then even if your coding isn't that great, I am more likely to recommend you for a job if I think you are a person who cares and is going to show up and communicate on the job. So keep that in mind. Those of you without your cameras on, it's fine if you're eating dinner or whatever. But if you come to boot camp and you never show your face and you never participate, we aren't likely to do a lot of referrals for you. And referrals in this space, in this industry, and especially in this city, are a big deal. So, and I'm sure Mel or any of our past TAs can tell you that. So the more you can participate, and that means here in class, and that doesn't mean talking over each other, but it does mean asking good questions. It also means telling Max when you need help. It means telling your TA when you need help. And that's not something to be ashamed of in any way. The people who actually succeed best are the ones who take advantage of one-on-ones with Max and the other TAs. And in Slack. So I'm going to post in Slack in the Career Coach channel. Like them, thumbs up, comments, questions, participate in there. It also will make it more fun. You guys are stuck on this ride together for the most intense 20 4 weeks you're ever going to experience in your life. So the more you guys can engage with each other and interact, I think the more fun that you'll have. And we can see that from our past cohorts, the ones who encourage each other. You know, if somebody else posts a question, you're like, oh, I had the same question. Thanks for asking that. You know, those things, we don't miss that. And we'll be paying attention. So like even right now, I see Natasha shaking her head. I see that you got it. You're paying attention. So I appreciate that. And you know, when Max is teaching, he appreciates knowing you're getting it or you're not getting it. So all of that feedback, all of this is communication. I see Palesh, if I'm saying your name right, smiling, you're getting it. So those kinds of things are what communication is. And if I want to look for someone to hire, that's what I'm looking for. Someone who is in it, paying attention, and is willing to learn. All of you will demonstrate when you're finished with this that you are willing to learn for sure. So I think that's everything I had to say. Max, is there anything else you wanted me to elaborate on? And if not, I'll open it up for any questions if anybody has anyone.
I think I got almost everyone added in the Slack channel. So over in your left sidebar now, you should have at least 3 channels that you're in addition to that CICC5 channel, which is kind of the general one. We've got the back channel, which you guys is restricted to just students, just in cohort 5. And then you should now also have that career coach channel over on the left-hand side. So if you don't have that, just shoot me a Slack message, or it's a public channel, so you guys can search for it and join it yourselves. But that is the primary method that Laura will be using to communicate with you guys throughout the program.
Yep. Any questions for me before I pop off? All right, awesome. Well, thanks for letting me jump in here for a few minutes, and good luck, everybody. And if you need anything from me, I'll be on Slack, and stay tuned for the information on group meetings and one-on-ones with me so I can get you started on your career side. All right, have a good night.
Thanks so much, Laura.
Bye.
So welcome to our first fully virtual class. May not feel very different for some of you, may be very different for some of you guys. I just wanted to do a quick overview of the settings, as some of you guys may be working with multiple monitors for the first time. So as most developers, we do like our multiple monitors because we have a gazillion windows open. That was a lesson we learned in cohort 3 when we were having classes in person. You know, all of a sudden, one student had an external monitor, and then like 3 students had them, and then all of a sudden, everyone was buying them. The people who didn't have them felt left out because it was so nice to be able to spread out. However, you may be looking at your second monitor and being like, this is weird. I don't know that I have control of it. What's going on? So if you don't have your monitor set up yet, that's totally fine. The settings that I'm about to show you will only show up if you have multiple monitors plugged in. But the most important thing about working with 2 different monitors is getting them positioned right so that you can move your mouse properly between the 2 of them and kind of have it go in the right direction. The other thing that I will say is I actually am working off 3 monitors. I will share a picture of my desk at some point this week when I'm not embarrassed how messy it is. I am not one of those people who believes that a clean desk means a clean mind. I think a clean desk means an unproductive person. But I won't judge you guys if you guys have clean desks. So I will send a picture of my desk, but I basically have 2 monitors here, and then my laptop is down here. The reason why I do that is I'm looking at all of you guys here. I can see all of your faces. However, you will see the receding hairline for most of class as I'm looking down and actually coding. The reason why I share my laptop screen is because if I shared a 28-inch screen onto your 13-inch laptop screens, I think we would also have to supply magnifying glasses for you guys. So anyway, just wanted to let you know, I can see all of you guys, but you're going to see me looking down for the majority of class as I'm coding and going through some settings. So anyway, let me show you some of these monitors. At any point, you are welcome to come off mute. I do not want you to think that just because we are virtual, that means you can't ask questions. I think this kind of levels the playing field a little bit and gives people the attention that they deserve for everyone virtual. But over the next week or two, we'll kind of settle into what virtual classes are like. And knowing that we do have in-person classes coming up, I believe it's for the last week of JavaScript, which is, let me see, our next in-person week coming up is week 10. So not until June. June 12th is our in-person week. Okay, let me show you these settings that I'm talking about. So in your menu bar, if you go to Apple up in the top left, you can go down to System Settings. And if you already have your monitor set exactly the way you want, that's totally fine. You don't need to make any adjustments. Once you are in System Settings, if you have this left sidebar, that means you're up to date on your operating system, you can go down to Displays. If you do not have an updated operating system, this is going to look a little differently, but you're still looking for that option called Displays. In here, you can see that I have all three monitors showing in here. But if you click on the Arrange button, you'll kind of see your layout of your monitors. So it's really important that this layout matches kind of the physical arrangement of your monitor. So you'll see it says built-in display. That is the display on your laptop. If you click on it, you'll notice the whole border of the desktop goes red around the monitor. You want to drag that to the place on your desk that represents where your computer is. If you get that set up right, you can test it by grabbing this entire window and try moving it to your other monitor. If it moves properly between the two of them, if that feels like the right positioning, then you've got that in the right spot. If you don't, go ahead and move that. The other thing that you can do is you can set one desktop as kind of your main display. That's where your icons are going to show up on your desktop. That's where your dock is going to be the easiest to access. It's going to be all of that kind of stuff. So up at the very top of this, it's going to be kind of hard to see, but there's that like white menu bar area. If you grab that and drag it to one of the other displays, you're going to see kind of all of your windows rearrange and your main desktop icons are going to move to that display. So you can not only arrange your displays here, but also set whatever one you want to be your primary display by grabbing that very top little menu bar and dragging it to one of the other monitors. The other thing that I will say is if you have your dock set to automatically hide and display, it makes it a little bit easier to get access to it on the other monitors. To make that change, you can do a search for dock or go to desktop and dock settings. And then on mine, I have mine set to automatically hide and show the dock, which means that I have to put my mouse down at the bottom to have it show up. Totally optional. That's a setting that I like to have on, but this is all kind of you getting to know your computer and feeling comfortable with it. Any questions on that? Everyone able to successfully move windows? They feel like multiple monitors might be their friend if they invest the time into the relationship.
Max, what was the first thing that you clicked into for system settings?
Yeah, so it's going to be under displays.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have the newer operating system, it should have an arrange button up at the top. And then from there, you can kind of drag these monitors around to make it match your physical space.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Just a reminder that cameras need to be on in order for you to get attendance points. And the reason why I am bringing that up is because I got, where did it go? My PEX card in the mail today. So this is the debit card that you guys will be receiving. I got mine and ordered it about 3 days before I ordered all of your cards. So they should be arriving probably by the end of the week, if not by early next week. There is an 800 number on it for you to call. All you need to do is pick the activate option, and you enter in the last 4 of the card, and the card is then activated. They will not have any funds on them until I think it's the second Friday in May. At that point, we'll be using your attendance history, your assignment history, and your quizzes. And if you're above that 80% point, you'll get that first disbursement of the $100. So that will be coming in your mail. If you don't have that by, let's say, early next week, shoot me a message. We can figure out what's going on there. But you should have that. And then that can be used for anything. That can be used to order hardware. That can be used to pay for gas. Basically, wherever Visa debit cards are accepted, you can use it for pretty much anything except withdrawing the cash directly from an ATM. Okay, let's see. Did I have anything else on the outline? I do not believe so. So let's fire into stand up. What did we learn yesterday? We started coding HTML. What was that like? What were some things that we learned about our HTML?
How to add an image.
How to add an image. An image is a good example of what kind of tag?
Is it SRC?
SRC is an attribute we use on our image. The image tag is a good example of a self-closing tag, right? So normally our HTML, we're used to seeing opening tags and closing tags, then the content coming between them. But image is our, I don't want to say unique, but a good example of a self-closing tag in that all the information is included in that one tag, right? The name of the element, the SRC attribute and value, that value happens to be the file path to the image. And then we also have that slash at the end saying that that tag is kind of closing itself. We also have opening and closing tags with the content in between them. Catching up on the chat here. We also had our 3 structural elements, our HTML tag, our head tag, and our body tag. We'll find them on any HTML page in order for that to be valid. We also have some terms that we covered from yesterday. So I'm going to scroll that up onto the screen just in case any of that jogs your memory. I will say that these definitions are not like the Coder's Handbook official definition. This is not Webster's here. But these are just kind of definitions off the top of my head of how I understand them. If you're ever like, you're wrong, Max, I disagree, I think the definition needs to include this, let me know. We can definitely get it updated. So we learned about adding color yesterday. We're going to be doing a deeper dive into CSS today, learning about the box model, learning about hrefs and margins and all kinds of stuff in there. So I'm going to be going a little bit deeper into that. We learned about H1 through H6 tags, which are a quick way to get kind of text on the screen at various different sizes. We learned about the href attribute for the anchor tag. We learned about p tags for paragraphs. There's a great takeaway that errors that you saw were directly attributed to misspelling and or having multiple or extra letters in the code. That's definitely going to be a very common thing that you're going to find in your code. The other thing that you'll find is uppercase versus lowercase is going to be something that comes back to bite you. And yes, every single letter matters to the computer. So we will be practicing seeing errors together. We will be working on sharing your screen, and you're going to lose track of the number of times I say share your screen. You will also lose track of the number of times that you say, yo, Max, you're being an idiot. You're showing something and not sharing your screen, and we have no idea what you're doing. So don't be afraid to interrupt me if I'm on some tear and you're like, you're not sharing your screen, and I'll go and grumble and share it. So don't be afraid to let me know if I'm not sharing my screen. VS Code typically will help you and show you if there is an error. If, VS Code is pretty good about underlining something in red. That red squiggly that you're getting is not necessarily saying that you spelled something wrong. It's saying VS Code kind of smells something that's not quite right in your code. So definitely pay attention to that. Kenny threw a great point out for W3, right? I'm throwing a bunch of different examples your way, but it's really important to be able to reference that and be able to get more information, because at a certain point, your memory is going to fill up, right? You're going to say, all right, I know we learned about A tags and there's an href in there, but I can't remember what do we put in an image tag in order to get access to put that image in there. And that is W3 Schools is a great resource for that, right? So we can just do a search W3 Schools IMG. The very first thing that comes up is our image tag, and it gives us a great example of the attributes that we use for that image tag. So documentation, very important. We also used Unsplash a little bit, right? That is a great repository for copyright-free images. So if you're ever designing a site and need something, Unsplash is going to be your place to go. I will also say that if you look at YouTube, by the way, if you are not subscribed to Hack Upstate, definitely subscribe. We have all of our class videos that are posted there. You can also go into the playlists and you will see there's the career coaching modules that Laura talked about. There's also the CIC C5. And if you click into that, you can see down here in the bottom right, all of the classes that we have already posted. And you'll notice I generate the thumbnails for class a day or two after it posts. If you see a date in this playlist without the whole like name of the class, that is class. I just haven't gotten around to updating the thumbnail and all of that stuff. Anyway, the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is all of these images are from Unsplash. So when I generate the thumbnails, I try and find something related. So like the tech stack, I got cup stacking and that kind of stuff. But anyway, all of these images come from Unsplash. That is a great resource. Starting to learn how to navigate through the code, right? Code over time will become easier to read. But the most important thing is that after class, even you may have gotten it all working, you may think you're all caught up, go back and say, do I understand why we wrote this code? Am I feeling comfortable enough with my level of understanding these concepts that I could go write another line of this code and have it do what I want? Or I could play with this a little bit and push myself and try something that wasn't covered in class and see if it will work, right? So those are the concepts that we want to make sure we're understanding of. When Max is saying this information is inside the body tag, what does he mean by that? What's the difference between the head and the body? And those required projects are a great place for you to kind of test your level of knowledge and say, am I getting this? Can I create this? And if the answer is no, and you're looking for additional resources, head over to those optional assignments, right? Because a lot of resources we have embedded in there. Even if you don't fully complete the assignment, you may find a resource in there that really works for you. Indentation is definitely something that's going to take a little time. The other thing that I will say takes a little bit of time is getting used to autocomplete, having VS Code kind of drop pieces of or snippets of code in there. If you are someone who looks at the keyboard when you are typing, try your hardest to learn how to type without looking at the keyboard, because there are so many things in autocompletes that will be popping up on the screen trying to help you, and you resist the urge to fight those pop-ups, because those autocompletes are there to help you. And if you learn to use them, you'll learn that VS Code is actually trying to do the indentation right for you. So as you're typing, you'll see my screen automatically kind of does the indentation right. Look at your screen as you're typing. Look at your screen the second you type that closing tag, right? That shift period, pause. Don't put in the closing tag. Don't do any indentation. Just look at the screen and see where you're at. What you may want to do is hit the enter button, and that's not only going to move the closing tag to the right spot for you, it's also going to indent you inside that tag to the right spot. That's going to be more evident as we start working with divs tonight, but the good news is a little bit of time, you'll get more comfortable with it. We talked about live server and live share. Those are both things that we'll be using today and almost for the entire cohort. So we will be jumping into that. I'm going to skip over Prettier because Prettier is something that we will dive into later once you guys are getting more comfortable with indentation. We talked about how to install extensions in VS Code like live server and live share. Remembering to save your work. Remember that when you have that little dot on the file name, instead of an X to close the tab, that means you haven't saved it yet. Shift tab is a good shortcut for aligning your code, but important to remember to do that yourself, right? Get comfortable with understanding the indentation and also recognizing when it's off a little bit. And then last thing I see in chat is about cascading, right? That C of the cascading style sheets, the idea that we can kind of cascade and build up CSS for a cumulative effect, or we can override the CSS by cascading over top of it. So that will become a little bit more clear as we start writing more and more code. Tonight, we are headed into working with CSS. We're going to learn the 3 different places we can put CSS. We've seen 2 of them already. We can add them into the style tag, or we can add them into the style attribute directly on an element, or we can use the style element and write our CSS in it directly. We're also going to learn how we write CSS in an external file, which is definitely the industry preferred way to do it. Then we're going to go into what I consider to be the most common or the most important CSS properties. We're going to learn a little bit about the box model. We're going to learn about how we can orient different things on the screen. And then we are going to switch over to Bootstrap, which you may see abbreviated as BS. No, we don't mean bullshit. We mean Bootstrap. So if you see BS, that is what we are talking about. We're going to talk about how we kind of install Bootstrap. It's not quite an install, but we're going to talk about how we can include it. We're going to learn about the grid, and we're going to learn about some components. All of this is going to culminate in what we will start on tomorrow, which is building this weather app. And if you think that this is absolutely insane that we can start building this tomorrow, probably is a little bit. This is a boot camp, baby. So this is what we are going to start building tomorrow. We're going to go through kind of how we plan through this, how we use an application installed on your Macs called Preview to make sure that we understand how to lay out this information. And then we dive into using divs, which we will be learning about a little bit later on tonight. This weather app will not be functioning quite yet. So we're going to use hard-coded data. When we say hard-coded, we mean we're just making up the numbers and typing it in directly. However, once you guys get into APIs, which is week 11 and 12 with Ryan Goss, we will be coming back to this project and adding in live data. So actually pulling that information in, making it update on the screen. And you will find that there are a lot of projects that you come back to. In fact, the chat application is one that you will be begging that we don't go back to, because we will be going over that chat app again and again and again. And right when we are finally finished with it, you'll realize that that is the best project to go back to, reference the code in there to apply directly to your capstone. So projects will certainly be popping back up, but this is going to be kind of the first project that we build with hard-coded data No JavaScript in this yet, but we're going to learn all about the grid and laying out this content and making sure that we plan out before we start writing our code. Any questions of where we're headed, things that we've covered, any issues? Okay, so we are going to dive into VS Code. We are going to pop that open, and it may open some code up that you had from yesterday. We're going to start with a completely blank slate today. So I'm going to close that. If you need a new window, you can go File, New Window. Make sure that you're on kind of this welcome page. You're going to go to File and then down to Open Folder. I will reach through the screen myself and beat you if you hit Open instead of Open Folder. Open Folder, we always want Open Folder. From there, we are going to go, again, File, Open Folder. Going to go to our desktop, to our C5 My Code, and we are going to make a into week 2, and we're going to make a new folder in the week 2 folder called D2 for day 2. From there, we are going to hit open. We are going to go over to the new file icon that only shows up if we're hovering over in the sidebar. And we're going to call this index.html. Anyone need a step repeated?
Yeah, how do you get a new page in VS Code?
So a new file or a new window?
A new window.
File up at the very top of the monitor, down to new window. And that pops it up in here, and then we can do our file open folder. And we're going to need a second window in just a minute to connect to the live share, but that's coming. Yes, index.html, we need that file extension in there so that VS Code knows that it's HTML. In just a couple minutes, we're also going to be creating our first CSS file and linking between the two of them. So let's get some HTML on the page. We're going to create our HTML tag. And you notice as soon as I hit Shift period, it put in my closing tag for me. This is what I'm talking about knowing about that autocomplete and watching the screen as you type. Because if I hit enter, you will see that it not only put in a new line for me, it indented me over one. That's okay. That's what we want. Because whenever we go inside a tag, we always indent a level. Unless that tag opens and closes on the same line. If it's a short little one that we can all fit on one line, we cannot indent. But whenever we are using multiple lines, we're always going to indent a level. So from here, we're going to add our head. And in our head, we are going to put our title. And in our title, we're going to call this CSS Playground. What's the point of the title? Where does the title show up?
Tab.
The tab. Yep. So that at the top of the tab, we can see when we're in Chrome. I have a couple windows open right now. I've got the course roster and Canvas. I've got my 2 different spreadsheets open with the name of the file. That title is going to show up. And we want to change that and remember to change that, because if we don't, it will say, I actually don't remember what it defaults to, but you want to change that. Don't forget to change that. Okay, now, in order to get my cursor at the right spot for the body element, I'm going to click at the very end of the headline and hit enter. Now, if I put it inside this HTML and I hit enter, now my indentation is off. And now this is indented in properly. And if I come up here, my indentation isn't right. So it's much better to go to the end of the line above where you want your new line and hit enter, and that's going to help you with your indentation there. From there, we're going to do our body element. And to make sure all of this is working, I am going to put in an H1 that says, hello world. Now, why didn't we indent after this H1? Because this is a short line. We opened the tag and closed the tag on the same line, so we didn't need to indent. But you notice because we're in the body, we indented a level in. That's what makes it much easier to say visually, hey, this H1 is inside the body element, just like this title tag is inside the head element. Okay, from there, we are going to remember to save. We've got our white circle of unsaved Doom up here. We're going to hit Command S to save. Then we are going to go down to the bottom right, and we're going to hit the Go Live button. And that is going to open up in Chrome and look like this. So I'm going to spend a moment here just juggling my windows. You guys might be using desktop spaces, virtual desktop spaces. You might be using mission control. I'm going to just kind of juggle things to get out of the way. So I'm going to move some of my windows. I really like it personally to have my code on the right half of the screen and my browser over on the left so I can kind of see as it's going. But now I don't have enough space for my code. So if you click on this file icon here, it's going to collapse down that sidebar and get it out of the way. Does anyone not have a hello world in their browser and need help? Okay, so we're going to be writing, yes, totally like nesting dolls in the chat. Good job. Okay, from here, we are going to get our live share started. So I'm going to go to File, New Window. This is probably the easiest step to forget and the one that you really, really want to do, because if you don't, the live share that you join is going to overwrite what we just got set up. We want two different windows here. Now, I will say that this step is always optional. If the live share is confusing you, if you're getting lost in your windows, if you can find me in Zoom and reference my code over there, that's totally fine. But as we go, as we have more and more code, you're going to want to be able to scroll and switch between files. So let's join the live share. You're going to go File, New Window. You are going to go over on the left-hand side here to the live share icon. Make sure you went File, New Window first. File, New Window. Go to the live share. You are going to click the Join button. And down in the bottom right, I don't have it on mine, but it should say Continue as Anonymous. Go ahead and click on that button. Then up here, it is not going to say Enter URL. It's going to say Enter your name. Go ahead and type your name on there, in there, and hit Enter. Once you do, you will get to this pop-up that says enter the URL of your collaboration session. In order to do that, you are going to switch over to the Zoom chat. And I just pasted the URL in there. Remember, do not highlight that URL to copy it. That sometimes copies in extra characters that prevents you from joining the live share. Instead, you want to right-click on that link with two fingers, go down to Copy Link. Then you want to head over to VS Code, paste that link in there, and hit Enter. That will bring you into my copy of the code. And then feel free to kind of rearrange your windows, use your multiple monitors, kind of get comfortable with where my code is, where your code is, all of that good stuff. All right, how are we feeling? Anyone need help? Be doing this almost every single day, so it will become rhythm for you guys. You guys will be very comfortable setting up your new folders. At some point, we'll start copying our projects from day to day so we can track the progress across them. And then we're going to work our way up to Git, which is a way that we, it's called version control system or software, VCS. We'll be learning about how we collaborate on code, how we back it up to GitHub, all of that good stuff. Okay. So we know 2 out of the 3 ways that we can get our CSS working. The first one is an inline style attribute. It's called inline CSS or inline styling. We can add that style attribute in there, and then we can write some CSS between those quotes. So the easiest one that we can see is color red. And if I've got my live server set up right, and I've got all of my code in here right, and I remember to save, you'll see my hello world turned red over in the browser. That's number 1. Number 2, we can add a style tag up in the head section, and you go ahead, question.
Sorry, I'm still having like I'm still trying to figure out this whole 2 screens thing. But so okay, so the only problem that I'm having is like I have the live. How do I get the web page to snap back into place when I have both screens? So like my monitor, the extended monitor that I'm using is on the left side of my laptop. So I'm trying to get the Visual Studio to snap in where like the hello world page is, but it won't. It keeps moving over.
Do you have the rectangle app installed?
Yeah, so I have it. It will snap into place for the right side of the screen because there's no connector desktop. There's no connector monitor. But on the left side, I mean, I could just
So the trick is to go slow on it. So instead of kind of just taking it and flicking it, take it and kind of get towards the edge and hold it not quite over the edge, but near the edge, and it will snap. It will snap in there.
I got it. Thank you.
Yep. It's hard because you get used to kind of slamming the windows there and having them resize. But when you have those extended monitors, the trick is to go a little bit slowly closer to the edge. And someone else probably just figured that out as well, right? That's why I'm spending a little time on it. But now if you're in full screen mode, that's also another option. We all know that I hate full screen mode. So, but you can also use this tile window to the left of screen and right of screen. But I certainly prefer going over to the left-hand side and putting it there. The other thing is if you have the rectangle app up in your menu bar, you can click on that icon in your menu bar and it gives you a drop down of all the places you can put your window. You can also click on one of those and it will tile it there for you. Okay. So we've got our inline style as our first place that we can put CSS. We can also use our style tag up in the head. When we do that, we need to use our CSS selector. So I'm going to say, hey, go find my H1. And instead of color, maybe we say, let's use text decoration. And I'm going to decorate it with a underline. So I save that, and I've got my underline showing up. Style tag, my selector, the curly braces saying, hey, we're going to send some CSS properties your way. Then we use a CSS property, what we are trying to style, and the value of that property of what we want to apply to it. And we can write multiple lines of CSS in our curly braces, right? So if we wanted to, we can say font dash weight and make it bold and save. Make it is thin an option? Why is that not working? Okay. Set to 100 just so it looks a little different. I think H1s by default have a font weight of bold, which is why it didn't look like they were changing. So for font weight, you can use 100 all the way up to 900, and that will control the font weight. So we just made it a little bit thinner over here. Okay. Now we are going to move on to our third option and the most common place of where we write our CSS. Because when we are writing all of our HTML here, our HTML document could get to thousands of lines of code long. And it gets a little messy to have our CSS either inline or included in the head tag up here. So the third place that we can put our CSS is in its own style sheet. So we're going to come over to the left side here in our sidebar. If you don't have the sidebar, you can just click on the file icon and it will pop back up. We're going to go to the new file icon here. And the most common name for this file is called style.css. I've seen people call it stylesheet.css. I've seen people call it styles.css. I've seen people call this pretty.css. Doesn't really matter as long as we're consistent on it. So I call it style.css. You may work at a company that calls it styles with an s.css. Doesn't really matter. So we're going to create that. And we're going to target our H1 in here again. And let's put a background color on that of, I don't know, pink. Now I'm looking over at my browser and it hasn't turned pink yet. Well, we need to tell our index.html, hey, use this style.css that I just created. Remember, if you are trying to keep up with me and now can't see what's in my style.css, you can always in the live share open my style.css file so that you can reference that code. I'm also going to move it to the bottom half of my screen so that we can work on both of them. The way that I did that, if you want to do that in your own, is you grab this style file and you just drag that tab down to kind of the bottom half of the screen and let go. That will split your files, have two files open at the same time. And then you can grab this nav bar and drag it down so you can separate things out. If that confuses you, if you're a two-tab person, totally fine. This is all personal preference. Okay.
Max, you got a question.
Does it matter what way you style the page or is it based on complexity? Great question. Usually it's based off of complexity. I would say 90% of the time you're going to see the style sheet be its own file. It's going to be separate only because your style sheet is going to grow at the same speed that your HTML content is going to. It's considered a little bit cleaner to have it out in a separate file. But it really, like I said, 90% of the time industry standard is to make it its own file. But if you're doing just quick little edits, you sometimes will see the style tag up at the top or inline styling down here.
Max, where do we add the style tag at?
The style tag in the head.
Over on the other side.
Over in index.html. We actually haven't linked these two files yet, though.
Okay.
We're going to do that next. Genevieve. You are muted.
How did you add that style CSS tab over on the left?
That's a new file.
Okay.
So new file, call it style.css, and then that will open up kind of up here at the top. I typed in this H1 background pink, and then if you want to move it out into its own kind of like separate pane, you can grab that and drag it down to the bottom half of the window, and it will open up down there.
All right.
Shay, what's up?
So it doesn't really matter if you made a style tag or if you just created a new style page for the CSS. It don't really matter, or it just makes it more cleaner.
Makes it cleaner. Yeah, it doesn't matter to the computer. The computer is going to apply the same styling, whether it's in a style tag as an attribute on the HTML element, whether it's a separate style element in your head or it's a separate file. But as you guys will see while we're building, it kind of makes sense for your brain to separate them out into two separate files. And so that's what we'll be doing, and it's kind of industry standard to do that as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I don't have my background as pink. Let's get it pink. In order to link these together, I'm going to go to the end of my head, but still inside of it. So I'm going to the end of my closing style tag, and I'm going to hit enter on that. Now my indentation is still correct because I'm indented inside the head, but I'm not indented too far over because I'm outside of the style. So there are 3 pieces of information that we need in order to link this style sheet. One is the element called link. The next is what we are linking, what's the name of the file. So we're going to say href, and that href is style.css. And finally, we need to tell it the relation of that link. What we're linking something in here, what is it that we're linking? 99% of the time, what we're linking is a style sheet, but theoretically, this link tag can be used for things other than style sheets. So we're going to say rel equals style sheet. So the browser knows to treat it as one. And then we are going to close out that tag. Now, the link tag in the head section is one of the only times that you don't need to use a self-closing tag. The link tag is kind of self-closing without this closing slash at the end. So kind of an exception. If you put it in there, it won't break it, but it is preferred in the industry to not put in that slash when you are using the link tag, only if you are using link in the head. So I'm going to go ahead and save that file. And if you've got everything working properly, you should see this very ugly red on pink.
Now, will command save, if you have it double like stacked like this, will command save both? Or do you have to, like, if you have them separate, you have to save both of them independently?
Good question. You do have to save both of them independently. If you hit Command Option S, it will save all of them. That's not a command that I personally use. I do save them separately, but you can hit Command Option S to save both. All right, which one of you didn't get it working? I know there's at least one of you.
I lost my second page for actually checking what the code looks like.
Okay, so go File, New Window. I'm sorry, did you lose my copy of the code or the browser window?
Yours is right next to mine, but I can't see the code that I'm actually producing with my code.
Okay, so down in the bottom right, do you have a port 5600?
No.
Okay, do you have a go live button?
Yes.
Click the go live button, and that's going to bring you back up in your browser.
Oh, okay. Yep, I'm all set. Thank you.
Yep.
My underline and the background isn't working.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen. Let's take a look.
Can I do the live share?
No, in Zoom, share your screen.
I am, okay, here we go.
Okay. You
You should
shared the, oh, perfect. No, you're good.
Good?
Yep, go ahead and pull up your code.
It's in the middle.
Okay, never mind. You did share your wrong desktop. So when you're in Zoom, you'll have the option of sharing desktop 1 or desktop 2. You shared whatever one isn't on, like we see your W3 schools and that kind of stuff. So stop your share, restart your share, and pick desktop 2 instead of 1.
How am I supposed to?
Go back to share screen.
Yeah.
The green button, and then where the screen that your mouse is on right now, is that where your code is?
No, it's on the extra screen on the left.
Okay, so stop the share. When you hit the share screen button, instead of picking desktop 1 or just hitting the share button, look at the grid of all the options, and there should be one that says desktop 2.
It's not giving me an option. It just says share screen. And then when I push it, it just pops up whatever you're seeing.
Did you?
Should I just drag the Zoom meeting over to the other screen?
You can
There.
try it.
There. Does that work?
It's still sharing the desktop 1 with your icons. By any chance, did you not join? Are you in Zoom in the browser instead of Zoom, like the downloaded application in your dock?
Yeah, I get there from the
From Canvas?
yeah.
If you look in your dock, do you have a Zoom icon?
Yep.
So what pops up after you hit the green share screen button?
Nothing. It just
starts the screen share immediately?
Yep.
I've got a bad feeling that's related to why your swiping was different. All right, for now, just drag your VS Code over to your other monitor and we'll take a look at it there. And then I'm going to have to think about why you aren't getting the pop-up for the shared screen. And definitely feel free to share notes, by the way, guys. Totally fine.
Is that better?
Yes, now I can see what you're on. Let me request remote. And the first thing that I notice is we've got a red body right here. That red body usually means the problem isn't actually in the body, it's on the line right above it. So scroll over just a little bit so that we can see the end of your link tag. And there's our problem. We have our opening arrow right here, but we don't have our closing arrow. So as soon as we put that closing arrow in and save, over in our browser, if I refresh, we still don't have any changes. So everything looks right here. You've got the file name in, you've got the style sheet in. Let's head over to your style.css. And you've got your background in as pink.
It stopped working at the underline part. Like I couldn't get the underline to work.
Interesting. Okay, let's see if live server just forgot what it was doing. I'm going to stop it and I'm going to restart it. Oh, do I think I know what the problem is. Let me see. Refresh. No. Text, decoration, underline, H1. We do like a exclamation here.
She has a HI instead of H1 right there in the body.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Good catch. You're all caught up.
There.
And if anyone else sees the issue, by the way, feel free to interrupt me.
How do I put the little style box down here?
Yep. If you grab the style tab up here and just kind of drag it down and wait for it to only show half the screen, that will get it down there.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for the assist there. Who else needs help?
I did too. I'm trying to get my code to launch, but it's just not popping up.
Okay, share your screen. Let's take a look.
All right.
And Shannon, I'll come for you next. Okay, first thing I notice is we've got some red squigglies. So we're going to fix that. We've got a back grood.
Oh wow.
Okay. And in general, we should have a semicolon at the end of every CSS line. So at the end of line 2, just throw a semicolon in there. We don't actually, no, sorry. That colon is correct. At the very end of the line, we're going to put a semicolon.
All right, here.
Yep. That won't break anything unless you have multiple elements, but in general, good CSS. Okay, so in the bottom left of your screen, do you have a live, a go live button?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna request remote control. And there, oh, you do. Your go live button down here.
It's bottom right.
Yep. So if you
Right.
click on that, that should pop it open in the browser and you should be good to go.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem. All right, Shannon, you're up.
Hi. So I am trying to get Hello World to be read because I had everything. And now when I typed in the style, it just stopped working.
Okay, share your screen. Let's take a look.
What do I? What the hell?
In Zoom, the share screen button is the green button down at the bottom.
Okay, I think I've got that right screen.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
So the first thing that I hone in on is when do things start going wrong in terms of colors? So scroll up in your index.html a little bit. And okay, so we notice our HTML tag is blue, our head tag is blue, our title, opening, closing blue, our style is blue, still blue, orange. Okay, so because that went to orange, we've got some red in here. In general, we never want to see red. And so the problem often is not on line 11 where it goes wrong. It is the line right above it. So
there's a backslash on tab.
There is a backslash. The problem isn't the backslash. The problem is we've got an opening quote, but not a closing quote right here.
Wait,
Without
yep,
the slash.
there you go. Now it is preferred that you don't have the slash in here. That closing tag is an exception. The link tag, for whatever reason, doesn't have closing tags in them. So you can just take that slash out. And now we are doomed to repeat our errors as well. Where's the next place you see a red squiggly? It's a tiny little one.
oh, under the tag there.
Yep. So inside of that, you're missing your closing quote. And now we're on the right track. We also have an opening arrow here that we shouldn't have. Okay, and then I would take out that hello tag as well and save. And now take a look in your browser. Is it showing everything up?
It's perfect.
Cool, good work.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
No problem. Who else needs help? All right. Oh, Shay, go ahead, go for it. You're on mute.
I didn't need help. I just had a question.
Shoot.
So I know you put the Damn, what was the question? Oh, I know you have the href as the style.css, which is basically referencing the new tag that we made over there, the
Yes.
style.css.
Yes.
What's the point of the rel equals style sheet? Like, is there any any reference to that? Like what is that for?
Yeah, the rel style sheet is basically telling the link tag what we're actually linking to, or how to treat the content of that file that we're linking to. Off the top of my head, I cannot think of other link tag rel values.
List of the top 10 best.
There are other things that you can use that link tag to reference. I'm going to drop a link in the chat if you're curious. I've never actually used a link tag for anything else in the rel except maybe preload and prefetch. But basically 99% of the time when you're using a link tag, you're going to be using it with a style sheet. But hypothetically, you could be linking to something that is not a style sheet. And that's what the point of the rel is to define the relationship of how the link tag should treat that thing that you're linking to. Good question. Like I said, 99% of the time we'll be using rel style sheet, but the only reason why we need to specify that is because hypothetically we could be relating that link to a different type of file. Any other questions? Anyone else need help?
Hey, Max, you go. Okay, you go.
Oh, it was just, I just wanted to make sure I was in the live stream. Can you tell? It says joined read only, which I assume is.
Then you're in it. Yep, you're good.
That's it. Thank you.
Asma, what's up?
Yes, I'm just trying to figure out how I have two windows open in my VS Code. The first one is the index.html and the other one is the style.css. How can I combine both of them? Trying to drag it, it's not really working for me.
So do you have, does it say D2 at the top here?
Yes.
Interesting. Share your screen.
Okay, hold on. You see it okay?
Yep. So you want to see both at the same time, you mean?
Yep. So the style.css is literally down here. I want it down here.
So just grab this tab here and kind of drag it to the bottom half of the screen.
Yeah, I tried. It kind of like exits out.
A little bit more. Oh, try again.
Yeah, it's doing.
I hold it there for like 3 seconds until they do, because mine was doing that for a while. You gotta hold it for a little bit.
Click and drag it down and then kind of hold it there. Keep going, down, 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 down. And then move to the right. There you go. Oh, you almost had it.
Okay, try again.
Yep, there you go. Let go.
Perfect.
There you go.
All right, thank you.
I think in the there are other way of doing it, which I don't usually use, but there's a icon here that says split editor right. If you click on that, it will actually move it over to like the right hand side if you prefer it there. And then there's also, no, we don't want to use those. If you right click on style.css, you'll see these split options. So if you pick split down, it will also move it down there. And then you can just close the one that was open up at the top. So if it's easier to right click on the file name and use these split options, you can, but totally up to you. Okay. Anyone else need help or have questions? Question for all of you. When I screen share, does your Zoom go into full screen and flip out? That drives me nuts. Let's fix that. So I don't think I can screen share these settings. Let me find out. Can you see the settings I have open in Zoom? Oh,
Yeah.
good. Under share screen, it says window size when screen sharing, and it's probably set to full screen mode. That setting can go rot in hell. Change it to maintain current size. That drives me nuts. That way, whenever someone starts sharing their screen, Zoom won't resize and freak out on you and make it assume that you want to see that in full screen mode. Again, in order to get to that, I went to Zoom down in the dock. Up in the menu bar for Zoom, I went to Zoom US and down to preferences, and then to share screen over on the left-hand side, and then change this top setting to maintain current size. I always forget about that setting to tell people to turn that on. Goggin, did you have a question?
So it's completely unrelated to this. We took the pictures for
the
a
headshots?
portfolio. Yeah,
Yes.
they never came back in. Like they're supposed to be on Saturday, I think.
Let me see. Let me reach out to Karen and see if she's got them.
And also, did you check the mock-up or no?
Not yet. I will definitely get to grading.
Because I don't know. I want to just know if I did it right. I don't know. I guess.
Grading takes me a little while because I do go through every assignment and I do try to leave comments on them. So I will definitely get back to you.
Thank you.
Oh, it looks like some people did get their headshots. But some of them were blurry. So stay tuned to hear from Karen on that. Okay, we ready to roll on to our next concept before break? So this is where we start to have a little bit more fun with our CSS. Now that we've got the file set up, I'm going to do a quick run through of all the different properties that I use pretty frequently. So we already talked about color. We're using our color red here. We can apply a couple different things, but one thing that we're really running into is we haven't done any layout yet, right? We haven't spaced things out. So I'm going to go to my index.html and I'm going to add in an H2 that says second line of text. And what we want to learn about here is the box model. Believe it or not, every HTML element that we have in our page has a box around it. That box has multiple layers and they're all invisible. So in W3 schools, we can see the content. Now, in order to get out of that content box, there is padding, border, and margin. In order to show that example, we're going to use a border around our content. In order to do that, I'm going to head to my style.css. I'm going to use the H2 selector, and I am going to add a border of 1px solid blue. So there are 3 values that the border property takes in CSS. One is the width of the border. One is the styling of the border, whether you want that dashed or something else. And the final is the color. And if you, in fact, just click on one of those values, you'll see this little pop-up in VS Code, and it's telling you line width, line style, and color are the 3 values that it's looking for there. So if we go back and we look at our HTML, we see our blue border showing up. Okay, and we can play with that, right? If we want that line to be a little bit thicker, we can say 5px instead of 1px, and we can see that. But what if I want some space? I don't like the word S being right up on my border. I want some breathing room. For that, we're going to use padding. So we are going to come in here and say padding is going to be 5px. Now that added a little bit of space between my border and my text. Padding is always between the border and the content. Now, what if I wanted padding, but only on the left side? We can use additional CSS properties here like padding dash left, and that will, let's bump this up so it's a little bit more evident. Let's say 15. That adds a little bit of breathing room on the left side. Okay, we can play with that a little bit more. I'm going to add a border of 5px solid red on my H1. Now I'm looking here and there's a gap here. Now, what if I don't want that gap there? What if I want these two on top of each other? Well, we know padding controls what's inside the border. What about what's on the outside of the border? That is called margin. And so if we say margin 0, and we apply that to both the H1 and the H2, now you will see our content is right on top of each other. Oh, yeah, I can split the screen, sorry.
Okay, wait, so margin is just the between the content and the bottom of the border?
Yeah, so every HTML element will have margin, border, and padding, even if they don't show up, even if they're 0. So we use margin to space different items apart on the outside of the border. And then if there is a border that shows up, then padding is the spacing between the content and the border itself. And if you're a visual person, this may help you understand the content is in the center. The padding is what's giving you space between the content and the border, then the border, and then the margin. Padding and margin are not interchangeable, but you will see sometimes there is some overlap there. So one of our other professors used to say the margin pushes in and the padding pushes out. So the padding is kind of pushing outside, taking the content and pushing out, compared to the margin, which is kind of pushing itself away from other items on the page. Okay, we're going to do one kind of visual tool here before we roll through all the other CSS properties that are important. So we can see this margin is here, or I'm sorry, this padding is here on the left. But what if we wanted to visualize that a little bit more? What if we took this margin out and said, how do we know that this is margin pushing them apart? How can we really see that? Well, this is the inspect tool in Chrome. So I'm going to right click, 2-finger click on my the world part, and I'm going to go down to inspect here. That is going to open up this toolbar, except your toolbar might be over here on the right. I personally hate my toolbar on the right. I prefer it on the bottom. That makes more sense to me. So I click on the 3 dots up at the top here, and I pick this bottom dock side to the 3rd icon in. If you prefer it on the left side, that's totally fine. There's also this giant what's new thing that's just getting in my way and annoying me. So I'm going to hit the little X button over here on the right.
You said you pressed inspect?
Right click and then go down to inspect. And then yours is probably going to be over on the right-hand side here. If you want to keep it there, that's fine. If you want it down at the bottom, it's the 3 dots to the left of the X, and then you choose the 3rd icon to dock it at the bottom.
Max, mine doesn't say expect.
Mine either.
Are you using Chrome or Safari?
Safari.
That's the problem. You have to be using Chrome in order to use these developer tools. There is a way to turn on developer tools in Safari, but instead I would recommend switching over to Chrome. In order to do that, if you go to Chrome up at the top and go down, open Chrome first, if you don't have it installed, you're going to be having a break in just a minute. Once you get Chrome installed, you go to Chrome down to settings, and under the search here, if you do a search for default browser, there will be a button in here that says set as default browser. And then finally stop your live share and restart it, and that will pop it open in Chrome.
Okay, okay.
So we're going to go through your options in inspect after the break. Let's take a break, be back at 7:25. If anyone needs help getting Chrome installed or getting that set up, I'm going to stick around for a couple minutes. But otherwise, go on break, be back at 7:25. We'll learn more about inspect. We're going to learn a couple other properties, and then we're going to get into using the Bootstrap grid.
Hey, Max. So for downloading Chrome, we just go to basically the Chrome website and download.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Max, I'm using Arc browser.
Okay.
Is that fine? It has an inspect tool.
I have no idea what the developer tools are like there, but it should be fine. I'm guessing it's going to be pretty similar to Chrome.
Yeah, it's pretty easy for, like, I think developing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because it
We're
doesn't have
not using anything like super powerful in the Chrome tools. So it should be fine. It shouldn't cause any issues.
Got it. I have Chrome installed anyways, but if we need it, we can just,
Yep, that's fine. No big deal.
All right.
Max, when I connected to live share, I'm seeing your code is, as you type, it's showing up on my screen as opposed to letting me type in.
So you should have two windows open in VS Code, one for the live share and one for your own.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
So just before you connect, it's best practice to go file new window and then connect to the live share in that new window. But now that you have the live share open already, you can go file new window first and then go file open folder and pop open your code.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll stick around just for a minute in case anyone needs help getting Chrome installed or switching that to their default browser. Otherwise, you can go and break and be back at 7:25.
Okay, I got it downloaded, but like I can't find the actual file.
It should be in your downloads folder.
Yeah, so okay, let me go into
So is it the same rule of thumb with opening up Chrome? You want to go to applications and open it from that?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, and it has a little pop-up that says set Google Chrome as your default browser. So as long as I'm selecting that, it should be good, right? I have to do the extra. Okay.
Yep. Go ahead and hit set, and then back in your VS Code, you can hit the stop button on the port and then hit go live again, and that will pop it open in Chrome instead.
So you said hit the stop and then basically open it up in Chrome.
Just hit go live and it should open it in Chrome for you.
okay, so I'm in my applications, but I still don't see it.
You want to share your screen, Shania?
Yes, 1 second. Okay, so now I'm still learning how to do that as well. Okay. Oh, video. Okay, I'm still. How do I share the video?
If you go into Zoom, there's a green button down at the bottom that says share screen.
Okay, that's probably why, because I don't have the actual app. I'm on the internet.
Okay, so you're definitely going to want to install that Zoom app and rejoin the meeting through there.
Okay. I think I was trying to download it onto the computer and it wasn't working for me. Is it like the just join for Zoom meetings?
It should be a link to download and install Zoom. So like if you do a search for download Zoom.
Okay.
I can post a link in I'll post a link in the Zoom chat for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Jen, I'm going to lose sleep over why you don't have multiple things on your screen share. It's going to bug me.
I can't figure out how to, like, I always join it via Canvas. I don't know how to join it in the Zoom app.
When you're looking at the meeting and you're like clicked into that window in the top left next to Apple, does it say Zoom US or Chrome?
No, it says Zoom US.
Oh, so you are joining in the app.
So when I go through Canvas and hit, you know, the class and join, it pops up the app.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah.
So that.
So it's telling me there's a new version of Rectangle software available.
That's fine. You can sit install. There's got to be something. Let me snoop around your settings for a second.
Go for it. Yeah.
There's something. Something feels off about the way your like virtual spaces are working.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go to desktop and dock, show animate, full screen, Windows and apps, mission control. Displays have separate space. Yeah, like all of that kind of looks right. Your mission control is there. You have your different desktops. Maybe it's just the.
So when you pull up these desktops 1, 2, and 3,
Yeah.
should it be showing the extra monitor on desktop?
They do separate across both of them. So,
Okay, so
only the screens on this, like the spaces are assigned to the monitor that they're on, basically.
Okay, because if like you can't see it right now, but on the top of my extra screen, it has the same little bar at the top and it says desktop 4 on it.
Yeah, and so when you go to share when you hit that green button, it's supposed in Zoom, it's supposed to give you a pop-up that says like that shows all of your windows and then also shows all of the desktops, and you should be able to pick desktop 4 and share that one.
Huh.
Oh, you know what? Let's try this. I don't know if Zoom will let me do this in the remote, but let me try it. Preferences, share screen. Aha.
Okay.
I get excited over stupid stuff. Okay, I'm going to stop your
No.
screen share. Share your screen now and see if you get a pop-up on that.
Yeah, it's showing me everything. Desktop 2, whiteboard, everything.
There you go. So now if you share desktop 4, I would be able to see your code and yeah. That's much better.
Okay.
Well, now I won't be losing sleep. Thank you for your assistance.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if I'm downloading it wrong or what the case is, but for some odd reason, it is not cooperating with me.
Okay, so after you've got it downloaded, do you see it in the downloads in the bottom right of the doc?
Mine's is at the top. I see the downloads from the website, from the internet.
Okay, but if you go down to the doc, you see the trash can in the bottom right?
It's not there.
What do you see if you go to the icon to the left of it and hover over it? What does it say?
I have my other recent apps open. Zoom end up going down there, and then the other apps is down there, but up top, here. My system is, let's see. Share screen, share.
There we go. Yep. Okay, so if you do open system settings there.
Okay, now I'm lost because I don't see where I'm sharing my screen at. Okay, open system settings.
Yep. Right here.
Okay.
And then you've got that turned on, which is good. So hit the back button right here. And then go to accessibility. You might have to scroll up a little bit. And then you can turn zoom on in there. And then that will let me remote control if I ask for it. Okay, so you've got that set up. So now let's get a couple things fixed. I'm going to request remote now that I can. Okay, so we're gonna look. Somehow you lost your downloads folder in the doc, so I'm gonna add that back for you.
Okay.
I'm gonna grab downloads from here. I'm gonna drag that in to right down here. So now when you click on it, you can see all your downloads.
Okay.
And then for Chrome, it looks like you already have it here. So the way we install it is we take it and we drag it into the applications folder. And then it's tempting to like double click on it there and just use it. But that's not the right way. What we want to do is once it's done copying, we are going to go to the applications folder. And we're going to find Google Chrome from there.
Oh, okay.
And open it. And now that it's open, we can take it and start and use Chrome. Okay, so now that's set as your default. We can take this icon in the dock and drag it over to this left side.
Okay.
And now, even if you quit out of this, Chrome will still stay in the dock because it's kind of on that left half.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
Asmo, what's up?
Am I
Can you
still?
hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I downloaded my Google Chrome. Is there anything else we're supposed to do in settings for Google Chrome? Am I all set?
Nope, you're all set. As long as it's set as your default browser, you're good to go.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Max.
Yep.
I don't think my computer has the most recent update. And the reason for that is because I'm trying to go up to the Apple system preferences, etc., to connect my monitor and my living room TV to code. When I go in there, it looks different than everyone else's.
That is the older operating system. And that is something that I'm actually still quite mad at Apple about, because we buy the computers right from Apple, and apparently they don't update their computers before they sell, I don't know, $22,000 worth of them to us.
Update them right in the store.
Actually, I've heard horror stories of people trying to update their laptops in the store because there were internet connection issues. And it took forever to download. I'm not sure if they ever resolved those. But anyway, in order to get the update installed, you're going to go to Apple and down to System Settings, and then, I'm sorry, System Preferences. And then in the second or third row, there should be one that says Software Update.
Let's see. Here we go. Okay.
So if you click into that one, there should be like a download and install button after it checks for updates called macOS Ventura. I would do that after class.
Yeah, I might have to restart it.
It's going to restart. It's going to take like up to an hour to install. And depending on your internet, it may take a hot minute to download. But I would just like minimize that window for now. And then you can, at the end of class, install that update, and it should go through and look. Apple changed this update from System Preferences to System Settings. And then you get the whole left sidebar and all of that stuff. So that's a free update. You may need an Apple ID, a free one, if you haven't signed in yet. But once the update goes through, other than it taking a minute, it should be pretty easy.
I can't use the one that I currently have for my iPhone.
You can. You absolutely can. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Welcome back, Amberlyn. Congrats for making it through the authentication hell known as Zoom.
Oh, we have 9 minutes left. Okay.
Did you need help with anything else, or were you just battling Zoom? Amberlyn.
I'm okay now. I was just trying to get back in, and I'm like, oh no, I'm back.
Yeah, we have to we have like Zoom authentication required because it really prevents Zoom bombing. So if anyone ever accidentally got our link, it's really hard to keep Zoom bombers out. And so that's why we have the authentication required. But glad you made it back in. Anyone else need help? Okay, I'm gonna stretch my legs. Kenny posted a good tip in the chat, which is if you hit Command Space, it will open up something called Spotlight. Spotlight is really helpful for switching between applications or opening new ones. So if you type something in like System Settings and hit Enter, it will automatically pop that open for you. Spotlight is also way more powerful than a lot of people realize. And it's a really helpful tool. It has something called Siri knowledge built into it. But I use Spotlight all the time for like if I need to add numbers together quickly, you know, you can just do like 4 + 8 and it will show you the calculator result. You can even type things in like weather and it will pop open the weather for your current area, and you can hit enter on that and it will like open it and give you more details. There's some interesting, if you like do a search for a person under the Siri knowledge, you can click in on the person and it gives you like a quick breakdown of the person. But anyway, the far most widely used one is if you hit Command Space and just type in the application that you're trying to get to, like App Store, and hit Enter, you'll see that automatically pops open that window. So Command Space, really good search tool for switching between things. It's called Spotlight. Okay, we are going to dive back into our code. We're going to run through the very last couple properties that I use all the time in my CSS. And then we're going to talk about Bootstrap and learn a little bit about the grid. So we've already learned a fair number of them. Color, we're learning about the box model. Oh, I'm sorry, we left off on inspect. That's what I wanted to get back to. So over in our inspect here, this can be used on any website. Every website on the internet is built using HTML and CSS. And if you go to Facebook and go into inspect, or go to Google and go into inspect, you can see this tool is used everywhere. And so over on the left side here, at least in the Elements tab, it's showing me all of the HTML it takes to make this website work. And if you hover over that H1, you can kind of see, in order to get to inspect, right-click on the page and go down to inspect. From here, you can kind of hover over the different tags, and you can see that's changing color up in the actual live section of the page. Well, this is kind of interesting because anything showing up in that orangey color is representing margin. And anything, if I hover over this H2, you see how there's that green area to the left of the second line text? That is showing me padding. Padding is always showing up in green. Margin is always showing up in orange. So if we go back to this H1 and hover over it, we can now actually visually see why those two aren't on top of each other. It's because the margin from that top H1 is pushing down on that H2 and creating space between both of them. So if I click on this H1 to select it, we can look over here on the right-hand side and see all of these different styles and where they're coming from. So we can actually see, hey, the element.style color is set to red. Well, where did we do that? We did that in the style on the element. We can also come back over here and see, hey, in this H1, in the style.css, we applied the background of pink and the border of 5px solid red. Well, what's really cool here is we can play around with some of these properties. So if I say I don't want my background to be pink anymore, I can single click on the word pink and just type in the word blue and hit enter, and that will live update in my page. Now, this is just a playground space, right? This is just to explore and figure out how these properties are changing. This did not change my code directly. If I go back up and I refresh this page, my background is back to the way it was. So this is meant more as a space to understand how the website is working or see what the different values are. We'll be using the inspect tool as we go, but it's a great way to figure out why your page isn't looking the way that you want it to. The other thing we can do is if we scroll down to the bottom of the styles, you can actually see our box model here. You can see our margin, our border, our padding, and then the inside size of our element, which is automatically calculated. So if we wanted to say, I wonder what this H1 would look like if we put 30 pixels of padding in the bottom of if we put 30 pixels of padding in the bottom of the element. So I'm going to come down. I have to scroll down in my styles. I make sure each one is selected. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to find that dash. And if I single click, double click, if I double click on that, you'll see that turns into a little text box. From there, I'm going to type in a number like 50 and hit enter, and you can see it inserts that padding for me so I can play around with the site, figure out what I want there. none of this is earth shattering. None of this is you know, we're not turning in this assignment, but just an intro into those inspect tools to see, hey, we can kind of figure out how big an item is and what the browser is calculating by looking in the inspect here. And even if we hover over that padding, we can see in the top part of the screen that it's turning green, showing us that spacing. And again, if we refresh the page, it goes back to normal and we see it the way it was before. Anyone have questions about the inspect? We cover about 2% of all of the power of this tool. You'll be learning more about the network tab as we get into APIs. You'll also be learning about the console and how JavaScript uses the console to output things as we are writing our code. For now, we'll be focusing on the elements. There are two other features that I'll show you in here before we get back to our CSS. One is this select an element in the page to inspect it. So if you click on this button and then come up and click on either the H1 or the H2, you'll see that that changes our selection here and shows the properties over on the right of whatever element we just clicked on. That's one really helpful tool. And then one that we'll be using a little bit later when we get into responsive web design is this toggle device toolbar. So if you click on that, up at the top, you'll see that there are some options here, and you can pick something like iPad Air and see what your website would look like on that device. You can also pick this responsive option and kind of drag it out and emulate different device screen sizes. So a couple options for you in there for dimensions and that kind of stuff. I'm going to remember to turn off my device toolbar, my device emulator. That's going to bring me back into the normal mode. Once I am out of that, I'm going to go ahead and close out of my inspect tools.
Just a quick question. I guess it's not like a big deal to me, but like, how did you get your inspect at the bottom of the screen instead of the side? Because I had to download Google Chrome while we were on break.
Yep, no problem. To the left of the close button, there should be a 3 dots little icon. If you click that in the top right, it says dock side, and yours is probably on the last one. Go to the one over from there and click on that, and that will dock it down to the bottom.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Can you show again how you got like back to like the original one?
Yeah, just the the refresh button up in the top left. If you just click refresh, it will clear out any changes that you made and bring you back to the original.
Thank you.
Yep. Unless you're in device mode and then you click on the second icon at the top of the toolbar, and that brings it out of the device testing. Okay. Just a couple more things that I'm going to show you guys in your CSS, and then we can jump into the Bootstrap grid and learn how we can start positioning our elements. So over in my CSS, I'm going to show you guys a couple more properties. One is font family. So font family, we are limited to about 10 to 15 fonts that are actually considered web safe. You can see that by default, we use Times New Roman. That's actually up to the browser to decide what the default is. A little later on, we're going to dive into Google Fonts and learn how we can install our own font faces and use different fonts in our website. But for now, we'll use a web safe font. So we're going to use the CSS property font family. VS Code is actually being very helpful here. They're showing me a list of all the different fonts that are available to me. So I will pick impact and hit the enter button on that, throw a semicolon in at the end of the line, and when I hit save, you'll see my font changes. Now you may be saying, whoa, Max, it started with impact, but look at all of these other fonts going on here. What's going on there? This is actually telling CSS, hey, if the impact font is installed, use it. However, if that impact font, for whatever reason, isn't installed on the computer, fall back to font family that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. If it doesn't have that one, go to Arial. If it doesn't have Arial, go to sans serif. You're guaranteed to have at least 3 font families installed in every browser dating back all the way to the 90s. Serif, sans serif, and monospace, which is kind of like Courier New. That's what you see in that's monospace font is what we use when we're coding. But font family is one, and we'll open up the world of Google Fonts a little bit later on so you can learn to use different fonts and get creative there. The other ones that you can use are something called height and width. So if I put my height in here and I say the height of my H1 is going to be 200 pixels and save, you'll see that that automatically kind of pushed my whole element down, and it said, hey, this is going to take up that size. We can also use width the same way. We can say width 100 pixels, save, and you'll see it pulled my element in. These two properties are the two biggest, I don't want to say mistakes, the two biggest warnings I can give you as junior developers. Don't lean on height and width too much. With responsive web design, what ends up happening is you end up adjusting your height on some elements, and then you go on to a smaller screen size, and the height isn't enough to contain the whole element, and it ends up pushing other elements down. So while these are common CSS properties to see, 9 times out of 10, there is a better way to adjust the sizing of your elements than by using height and width specifically. So I throw them out there just so you know about them. But when you are sizing your elements, use caution when using them, especially if you're setting them to a specific value. The exception to that might be images. Images, it's very common to size down using height or width, but just be careful on that. Text decoration is one that we have already seen. And then the last one we can play with, I'm going to take the width off of my H1 so that it goes the whole size. The last one that we can play around with is something called text align. And we can put that in the center, and that moves our text over into the center. Those are my top CSS properties. Hopefully that just opens the box, opens the door for you for what CSS properties are available. You can always use W3 Schools to learn more about them, see the complete list that's available, all of that good stuff. Mel just posted a link into W3 Schools over on that left sidebar. They have a list of all the different CSS properties that you can play around with. No, I do not remember the syntax for all of them. Things like border, you'll remember. But every now and then I'll need to use a property and I'm like, oh, what's it take to make the font bold? Is it font weight? Is it text weight? Is it weight? Is it, and so going into CSS in W3 Schools, scrolling down on the left there, seeing that the actual property is font weight and using that can be very helpful. Anyone have questions on just kind of intro to CSS? Are we kind of understanding the selectors? Are we understanding? There's one other thing that I want to touch on. We've been using the selectors here as the element names. But remember, there are 3 very common selectors. Using the H2 is fine, but when we add in another H2, we see that all the styling that applies to the first H2 applies to the second H2. So in order to fix that, there are 3 different selector types that are very common. The first one is using the element name like we're using here. The second is adding an ID. So we can say third H2. Then because we're using an ID here, we line that up down here with a £sign or a hashtag. So what we're saying here is this is lining up with the ID, and then the ID that we put in, whatever is here, needs to match whatever is down here. I don't know where that semicolon came from, but we put our curly braces in there, and then if we want to, we can cascade over whatever was in this H2. So I could put my border on this as 1px dashed and red, and as soon as I save, you will see that only applies to whatever the ID is here. The whole point of the selector is whatever we have here lines up with whatever we have in the ID up here. Last selector type that is very common is using a class instead. We can use classes in multiple places. So let's say we would like a class that space at the top. I know that's a terrible name, but we'll roll with that for now. We can also use that class in a different place and use the exact same name, space at the top. And then down here, because it is a class, instead of using the # or the hashtag that we use with our ID, we use a period instead. So a period always associates with the class. Then we can say space at the top and say there's going to be a padding on the top of 50 px and save. And you can see the space at the top here selected the two elements in our HTML that had that class and applied 50 pixels of padding both to the first H1 and also to the third one, because those are the two that have our classes on them. All right, how are we feeling? Are we thinking that HTML and CSS isn't so scary anymore? Feeling like we get the concepts? You must have just updated the reactions because they're now all animated and they're all so cute. Okay. We're making good progress here, but we want to get into Bootstrap a little bit. We've got all of these components, but we haven't really laid them out yet, right? What if we want to have something on the left side of the screen and something on the right side of the screen? Well, there are a ton of different ways to do that in CSS. We can do that with CSS float. We can use something called the CSS grid, which is built right in. We can display elements in a different layout style. But what I find to be the most powerful and easiest to get using is the Bootstrap grid. So Bootstrap is a CSS framework. Does anyone want to take a stab at what they think a CSS framework does?
It's pre-made blocks of code, so you don't have to write CSS over and over.
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. So the story is very smart people at Twitter were working on a web page, and every time they made a web page, they started making all of these different classes. And then they would go to work on another project and they said, well, wait a second, I already made all of the CSS on this other page. What if I just take the CSS and use it over here? And then a bunch of different people started doing this and they started saying, oh, we should have some documentation around this. And then all of a sudden they said, well, what if we open source this? Open source is basically saying taking this software and opening it up to the public so other people can use it. And the basic idea here is, hey, everyone agrees CSS is how we style things. What if we have a bunch of pre-made CSS classes? And if we tell people what classes to use, all of a sudden, all of our styling will be available to them without them actually having to write the CSS for everything. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a whole new file here. We're going to put our index aside. We're going to make a new file, and we're going to just call this bootstrap.html. Now, we're just calling that because we're separating out our files here. It does not necessarily need to be called bootstrap.html. This is not like a special file name like indexes. So I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to practice with my tags again, right? So we're going to do a HTML tag. We're going to do our head tag. We're going to do our title tag. I'm going to say bootstrap. We're going to come down to the end of the head tag. We're going to add in our body tag. And we're going to just type in the word bootstrap. Trust me, with time, you will get that comfortable typing HTML out that quickly. But for now, I'll give you guys a minute to catch up. Yes, there is a shortcut to generate this. No, I will not be telling you it this week. Yes, I will tell you it next week.
I'm just having one problem. So I can't get like on the live share, I can't get the tabs, the little tabs to go back next to each other, like the index and the style.
What do you mean?
Like the one that's showing what you're doing on your screen,
Mhm.
but for me, like my live share on my Visual Studio, I can't get like how you have the index HTML tab above the style CSS one. I can't get that like that on my screen.
So if you open the file and right click on style.css, it should give you the option to split down. Did that fix it?
It's not like letting me it won't let me open both of them.
So in VS Code, if you single click on the file to open it, it opens it in a new tab. If you double click on it, it opens it in the existing tab. So if you single click on it, it should open it in a separate tab.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Thanks.
Yep. That was one of those things that I never knew I knew until I realized that single clicking is a new tab, double clicking opens in the existing one. Kind of annoying, but that's the way they do it. Okay, everyone caught up on their bootstrap.html. Okay, over in the browser, we're going to look in the URL and we're going to change that URL from index over to Bootstrap. And when we hit enter on that, we should see this very ugly word, Bootstrap, in Times New Roman. Okay. Anyone need help getting Bootstrap show up? We're all good?
Okay, that showed up. How'd you get it to show up?
Up in the URL where we had our index.html, we changed the word index to Bootstrap and hit enter on that. If you don't have index in the HTML, in the URL, excuse me, that's fine. Just do a slash and then do bootstrap.html and hit enter, and that will pop up. Keep in mind on your computers, it's probably 5600, not 5601. That's totally fine. That's something unique to my computer.
Can you say that one more time?
Yep, up in the URL. If you have it that says index.html, change index to Bootstrap. If you don't have that in the URL, just make sure there's a slash after all the numbers and then type in bootstrap.html and hit enter.
Thank you.
Yeah, mine's still not doing that.
Go ahead and share your screen. Let's take a look.
Yes, share desktop one. Share.
Desktop one or wherever you've got. Yeah, that's the right one. Okay.
Nope, it's the wrong one.
No, this is the correct one.
Oh, okay, you see it? Yeah, you see my split view with the VS
What did I
Code.
circle?
Yeah, the
Just
unsafe.
hit Command S and then go back to the browser and refresh, and you're good to go.
Oh, it's good. Wow. Thanks.
No problem. Anyone else need help? Good reminder to save.
I do. Mine, when I change the index to Bootstrap, it says it can't be reached.
Did you create bootstrap.html in your
Yeah.
VS Code?
Yeah.
Go ahead, share your screen. Let's take a look.
Share my screen. Share screen. Desktop 1. I don't know. Desktop 1 has a big blue arrow or exclamation. All right, share my screen. You know what? Come back to me because I have to open this up. So
Sure.
if somebody else has a question, go ahead.
Any other questions?
Heard you talking about updating before and the break. I just wanted to tell everyone, if you're in the library and you're trying to update your software, don't do it. You will end up in like really bad position.
Yeah, the Mac OS updates take probably at least 20 minutes to install, and depending on what kind of internet connection you're on, it can take a couple hours to download. So
Hey Max, I think I'm getting confused with the like file versus folder because I have bootstrap.html, but it doesn't have the orange brackets like the index.html.
okay. What I would recommend is deleting whatever you have for your bootstrap.html and then recreating it as a file.
Okay. Delete. I'm opening it as a file out of D2, right?
You're creating a new file in D2.
Okay.
Yeah, we should be using the new file icon right here.
Yeah.
Okay. From here, and buckle up because this is where we always lose people the first time. It's okay. Scream bloody murder if you get lost. We're going to open a new tab and we're going to go to getbootstrap.com. All one word. It's not bootstrap.com. It is getbootstrap.com. If your window is not expanded enough, you won't see the nav bar here. We are going to click on Docs. Once we get into the docs, there is a quick start down here. We are going to go down to number 2, and there is a link tag right here. You need to highlight that link tag all the way over to the very end of it. Make sure you've got that selected. It should say cross origin equals anonymous. That is the only line that we want. It is a very long line. You need to drag all the way over until you get to that cross origin anonymous. Once you have that selected, you can hit Command C or right click on it and hit copy. We're going to head back over to our code. And in the head section, after the title, we're going to put our cursor after title. We're going to hit enter and paste. We are going to hit save. Then we are going to go back to our browser and we should see Bootstrap is now no longer in Times New Roman. If it is not in Times New Roman, you have successfully installed Bootstrap into this page. I'm going to run through those steps one more time. So we're going to open a new tab. We're going to go to getbootstrap.com. We're going to click on Docs in the top left. We're going to scroll down to number 2, and there is a link tag about halfway through. You're going to highlight that link tag all the way across until you see cross origin anonymous. That is the only one line that we want to be highlighting. We're going to hit Command C to copy that. We are then going to go back over to VS Code and put our cursor after title and hit enter. Then we are going to hit Command V and paste that link tag in. Then we are going to hit Command S to save it. And finally, we're going to head back over to the original Bootstrap tab, and you should see Bootstrap is now no longer in Times New Roman. The second worst font in the world. If you still have it in Times New Roman, raise your hand and I can help you through it. If you don't have it in Times New Roman, you are all caught up. We will be using Bootstrap for every website we use from here on out. So getting those steps down, very important. Natasha, what's up?
I'm sorry. First of all, my mic was on a few seconds ago and I just blurted something out. My bad for that one.
Oh,
But
you're fine.
thank
It
you.
happens.
I didn't see the actual link we're supposed to copy again. I'm on Bootstrap, but there's so many of them and I don't know which one.
Yep, under number 2,
Mhm.
it is the only link tag in number 2. So it's like halfway down right before the closing of the head.
Okay.
And then you're going to paste that in underneath your title in VS Code. Save and head back over to your Bootstrap tab in Chrome, and you should see the font change.
Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else need help?
I just have a question. Is
Yeah.
your VS Code set up to automatically start a new line? Like mine is all on the same line, but did you manually go in there and
Mine is set up to do that line spacing
Oh,
automatically.
okay. All
If
right.
yours is, that's a very good question. If
I
yours
thought
is
I
all
missed
on the same
something.
line, leave it all on the same line. That's fine. You
Okay.
don't need to worry about spacing it out. If that's going to bug you and you really want to separate it out into different lines, you can. But if yours is all on one line, that is totally fine.
Okay.
No problems there.
I thought I had missed something. I was going through the line like, wait, mine doesn't look like that. But I mean, it worked, but I just wanted
Yep,
to.
that's fine. Yeah, good question. Don't worry about mine being on multiple lines there. Okay, so we have exposed ourselves to a lot of different HTML elements, but we haven't done the most common of all of them, which is a div. Jen, I use Prettier, which isn't technically a line wrap option. So I can't like easily share that setting with you. We'll install Prettier in maybe the end of next week. And then some of you guys will love it and some of you guys will hate it.
See, I have it installed, but it's not doing that. So I thought it was one of the settings in there because there's like a line wrap setting in there.
No, I'll go over that next week.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we haven't gone over this thing called a div. And a div is by far the most common, most used HTML element. And I've used divs for, I don't know, 2 decades. And last year I learned that a div stands for division. Why I did not know that is beyond me, but a div is basically just a box. And a box can be put in other boxes, right? We know that we can nest some of our tags in other tags. We see our body tag nested in the HTML tag. But a div is basically a way to put a box around the content that we're working with so we can group that content together. So for example, I am going to use a div and I'm going to say the class is equal to container. And that div, again, we can't see it, but it's a way of us organizing our code to kind of group it together. I'm then going to take my Bootstrap word and move it inside that container. Now from here, I want to have two words show up. I want column 1 to show up on the left side, and I want column 2 to show up on the right side. In order to do that, inside my div class container, I'm going to make a div class row. Before we can use a column, we have to put those columns into a row. We think about a table. When we make the table, we need to figure out how many rows there are going to be before we start putting the columns in. So we always think row and then column. From there, I want 2 columns inside my row. So I need to be careful here. I'm not going to do them out here, because if I do them out here, they're not inside my row. I need to very carefully be inside between this opening div and this closing div. And I'm going to make a div class equal col. And inside of that, I'm going to say my first column. Yes, you can definitely put divs inside of other divs. 99% of the time, you will find divs inside of other divs. Now, if I did my first column, I think it makes sense to do my second column, right? So this is where we get into what they call div soup, because we've got 1, 2, 3 divs and 1, 2, 3 closing divs. And it's like, whoa, I'm getting 6 here. What's lining up? So I'm going to show you 2 tricks that you can do for that. One, if I click into this closing div, you see that light gray background behind it? That is lining up with my closing div up here. So even if my indentation is wrong, when I click on one of those closing divs, you see it will highlight the matching opening div that it's related to. Now, if we get one of these divs wrong, our layout is going to implode on our page. It is going to look terrible. And what we need to do is go through and say, hey, are we missing one of these closing divs? Did we miss an arrow? Did we think we were inside a div and we were outside of a div? We go from there. This is where your indentation matters, because we can easily tell my first column is inside the column because it's indented a level over. But if we weren't sure about that, we could click on that closing div and see that it lines up with this opening div. We can click on this closing div and see that this closing div is closing out this row, and this final closing div is closing out this container. Okay, all of that's great, but wouldn't it be nice if we could put a note in here and say, hey, note to self, this is what this div is closing out? Well, in programming, that is called a comment. And every programming language that we are going to learn is going to use a different syntax for comments. Natasha, you've got it right for JavaScript, but we're not writing JavaScript. We are writing HTML. So to write an HTML comment, what we do is we use a tag, just like we normally do, with an exclamation point, that's your shift 1, and 2 dashes next to the plus. And you will see VS Code automatically puts 2 dashes and the closing arrow in there for us. Now, whatever is between this opening and this closing, the computer will completely ignore. That is a comment to other programmers to say, hey, ignore whatever's in here. This is a note for the programmer. I don't want the computer to pay attention to this. So as you get started, it is very common to leave comments in your code around what this div is closing. So I'm going to say close column div. And I'm going to practice that. I'm going to say close row div. And finally, I'm going to put in my close container div. Now, if we save this and look over in the browser hasn't done anything. You know what? I'm going to turn off my prettier. Give me 1 second. So now when we're looking at this, it's much easier for us to see because of our comments. This is the close of the column div. Because of that, I say, hey, I want another column, but that column should be inside of my row. So I'm going to click on this closing div and make sure that that is lining up with my row. Because of that, I need to go above this closing div and make my next column. In order to do that, I'm going to put my cursor at the end of the col div, the closing col div. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to add my class col. And I'm going to say second col. I'm going to save. I'm going to come back over here, and now I've got my first column and my second column. We're going to make one more change to make this a little bit more visible, and then we're going to stop and get everyone caught up, make sure they've got this code working. Up at the top in my head, because we're not going to be doing a ton of styling, I'm going to add a style tag. And what do we know about classes? Classes line up with periods in our CSS. So I'm going to target the col class and add a border of 1px solid blue. When I save, I go back over to my browser. Now it's a little bit easier to see where my columns are. So we're going to stop here. We're going to give everyone a minute to catch up on this. If you've got it all working, make sure you understand how it's working. If you do have it all working, play around. Try adding in another column. Try adding in another row. Play around with your code. Don't be afraid of it. Make sure we understand, hey, do we understand how this is working? And if we do think we understand it, play around with it. See if you can get it to do what you want it to do. Add in another row, add in another column, play with that. Don't worry, if you don't have it working, spend some time, go through here, look at the comments, make sure you've got everything lining up. And if it still doesn't look like this, raise your hand and I can help you. It is important to note that this container, row, and column are only working because we have Bootstrap installed with this link tag. If we did not have this link tag in, it would look like this. Our layouts break, our fonts break, nothing looks pretty. It is important to note that this code only works because we have Bootstrap installed. So again, the final product that we're looking for is this my first column, second column with the blue borders around the column so we can visually see where they are.
So the Bootstrap is recognizing row and column by itself, right? And the width and making it usable for the mobile or desktop.
Correct.
Automatically. I get it. I used it a long time ago. I don't remember.
Yeah, if you're curious, you can take that href, that long URL, and copy it into a new browser tab and hit enter. You'll see it is a giant, massive CSS file, but you can actually inspect it and see where the rows are coming from, how the columns are being sized, all of that good stuff. might go over your head. It certainly goes over my head. It is quite advanced CSS, but it is very powerful.
So what if we call the class call one, call two? Will that still still recognize it?
Not in the way that you may be expecting. We're going to get into column sizing just in 1 second. But if you just put column 1 in here and hit save, you'll see it breaks that, and the second column isn't in the right spot anymore. We're going to get into column sizing in just 1 second, though.
Got it.
All right, so this is a poll that you guys are going to learn to hate. This is our status check. And so whenever we take a coding break, we're going to put this poll up. The most important part of this poll is if you're still working on it, if you still can't figure it out, don't vote in the poll yet. That gives me a check to know how many people have this done, how many people are still working on it. If you're still working on it, that's totally fine. Don't vote in the poll. If you got it working, go ahead and vote, sure did. And if you're one of those people, and this will happen as class progresses, that you find out that you don't learn by following along, you learn better by taking notes throughout class, and then you try and do these projects when you rewatch the videos later, that's totally fine. You can vote that no, I'll catch up later vote. That's totally fine as well. So we've got 14 people voted in so far. Rain, you've got a question, shoot. Taylor, take a look at this style tag up at the top. Make sure that it looks just like my style tag here with the .col. This is how it looks in the browser. And keep in mind that it might look a little different if you expand the window out. So if it's full screen, that might do it. But if you don't have the styling and everything looks right, just go ahead and raise your hand. Cool. Glad you found it.
Max,
Yes.
I apologize. I was on mute. I'm picking up what you're putting down to the point that I have everything typed in to my Bootstrap. But I will definitely have to go on YouTube and rewatch this a few times.
That's totally fine.
I'm not gonna lie to you.
So that's totally fine. And thank you for sharing that, because a lot of other people will have to do that. I think all of the top graduates of our program going all the way back to cohort 1 will probably tell you that rewatching the YouTube videos is the most important resource out of all of the resources we provide. So it's totally fine to have to go back and rewatch it. The only thing that I will asterisk that with and give you an exception for is this is our first project, right? This is literally the second day of a 4-week HTML stretch. So we're going to get more practice with this. You're not going to get super comfortable with HTML with this project alone, and that's okay. So YouTube videos are great. I definitely, if I were in the class, if I were in your shoes, I'd be rewatching them all the time. One thing that is a little weird about me that I'll share about you guys is I watch videos on 2x speed, and that is a talent that I have built up over time. that I should say it's a skill I have built up over time. So I started watching videos on 1.25, making sure I could understand the person, making sure it wasn't too Alvin and the Chipmunks for me. And then I went up to 1.5, and over about a 6-month period, I trained my brain up to be able to understand things at 2x. So that's a great skill if you want to develop that. Don't go right to 2x. You're going to think that people are insane. My family has called me out on it and told me I'm all nuts and thinks it's impossible for me to understand that. But it really is a skill if you build yourself up on those speeds over time. That is a great option. I think all of the smartest people work their way up to the 2x. It sounds nuts. I should actually try and find an article on that. Anyway, something to consider. Totally fine to go back to these YouTube videos. Like I said, there is a reason they are recorded. And this is all we are doing tonight. We are going to stop here and make sure everyone gets caught up. So if you have this working and you're like, this is easy for me, peace out, suckers, that's totally fine. Tomorrow, we are going to dive into a little bit more about the grid system. We're going to learn about Bootstrap components, and then we're going to dive into building our first weather app. We're going to plan it all out before we dive into the code. And once we get our plan in place, we're going to lay it all out in the code. That will take us 2 full days to build that page. That is totally fine. We're going to build up speed here, and you're going to get to the end of those projects and go, whoa, I can't believe I built that. But we are going to learn through the projects. If you are not someone who learns hands-on, if you are someone who learns by getting all the concepts in their head first, if you're someone who learns better through slides, go to those optional assignments because we've got a long list of resources. If you find a resource that works for you and is not in that list, share it with your fellow students, right? Everyone is going to learn this differently. We're going to learn hands-on in the class, but the vast majority of you are going to get to the end of class and have to review what we did, whether that's in the YouTube videos, whether that's reading through the code again, whether that's Googling things, that's totally fine. Bring your questions to class tomorrow, though. If you're staring at this and feel like you're going cross-eyed because it's not working or you just don't understand why we're doing it, bring those questions to stand up. That's what it is way more important that we understand the concepts that we covered today than it is about any of the concepts tomorrow, because all of this content is going to build on itself. If you don't understand this, you're not going to understand the next thing. So make sure you have those questions prepared for class. Or if you're like, I don't want to ask that question, you can always DM the TA and the TA can ask that question for you, or book your one-on-ones. Those one-on-ones are available to you now. You can go to Canvas, you can click on the Calendly links, you can find me, book a time on my calendar, you'll get a Zoom link. We'll go through it together, make sure you're understanding it. This is a tough program, but we want to get you off to the right start. So more projects are coming. We've got another 3.5 weeks of this content. And the good news is this is one of those things that you don't get it and you don't get it and you don't get it until all of a sudden you get it. And then you feel really dumb for not getting it. There are other concepts that we will learn that you'll progressively learn over time. HTML is one of those things that it's very binary. You don't get it until all of a sudden you get it and it just makes sense. So that's the goal that you're shooting for. All of a sudden something will click and it will just make sense. We will get there over time. All of that said, go ahead and raise your hands if you still need help. Shay, go for it.
So I got everything down. I got the code. But for some reason, mine is not showing exactly the way yours is showing. Like, for instance, my, wow, yeah, I could
Share your
screenshot.
screen. Let's take a look. I'm telling you guys, I'm going to invade your dreams. You will not be able to escape my voice. It's terrible.
I was just gonna say that, Max.
Okay, so we've got your container, your row, your call. Everything looks good there. Scroll up a little bit for me. Okay, you've got your link tag in. Can we see what it looks like in the browser?
Yeah, just a sec.
And Jen, that's a great example, right? You can follow along. That's what those required projects are really good at in Canvas, because you think you're getting it all until we ask you to do it. And then you're like, whoa, where would I even start on that, right? And so that is that's why we have those required projects, because that's a good check-in to say, oh, I got to go back and work on that. Okay, Shay, coming back to you. Let me request remote control. Did you get a pop-up on one of your monitors for remote? Thank you. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Let me try and, okay, so your zoom isn't the problem. We're gonna actually use that inspect tool and figure out what's going on. So if I go into your inspect, fresh container, Bootstrap, you've got your row, you've got your two calls in it, you close everything out. Okay, I don't think I actually have no idea what's happening here.
Probably restart the live server thing.
Yeah, let's try that. So Shay, in VS Code, hit the stop button on the port down in the bottom right, and then restart it. And yes, Shen, for the required projects, it's like a subsection of the assignments in Canvas. Up in the top right, it will say like sort by something and then sort by type. If you sort it by type, it will group the required projects in. Aha. Okay, so it was just an issue. Sometimes when it's really weird and you can't explain it, try rebooting the live server. It's not a guaranteed fix. Most of the time it will be your code, not your live server. But in this case, it was the live server.
Yeah, it was weird because when I changed the call or the class and the code and I picked call 1 for the first column, it would show column 2 when it was missing the first time, but it would have the border under that instead. So I was wondering, like, what did I do different for it to do that?
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else need help? All right, well, I got you for 5 minutes, and I promise you we're not going to do any new code. So sometimes getting visual can be really helpful. So I'm someone who, when I was a junior dev, I would actually print out my code and go pick it up from the printer and take highlighters to it, right? And sometimes drawing a visual around it is very helpful. Ciara, did you have a question?
Yeah, so my line, I think it's 22 and 25, where the div is, it's red.
Okay, go to your screen. Let's take a look.
How do I share my screen?
In Zoom, there's a green button at the bottom of the toolbar.
Okay, I got it. And this is the one I want to share right here. Can you see it?
Hit the share button in the bottom right. Oh, it's coming through. Okay. So oftentimes the problem is not with the red line. It's it's an issue either 1 or 2 lines above it. So we notice it started going red here. There isn't any issue with this line, but if we look at this opening div here, you'll notice we are missing a closing arrow right there.
Oh, okay. So that's line what?
20.
Line 20.
So you see on line 19 how we have the closing arrow after the row, and then VS Code's trying to be helpful. Yeah, you got it right. And then you're also going to have that down on 25, it's red, That's because you're missing the arrow on 23.
Oh, okay.
And then
Is
take
there
out that
a way to
closing
Get
div.
rid of that like part that it just automatically does that, or that's just like a feature?
That's a feature that when you create the div the first time, it will put the closing div in where you want it. It's just kind of confusing when you don't get the div in right. It auto completes when you do fix the issue. So it is a feature that is beneficial once you get comfortable creating the divs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm looking at mine and I'm looking at yours. And like I see like your line goes down to like 29. Like, does that matter if my line doesn't go?
Nope,
Like,
that's totally fine. The line numbers don't need to line up. Okay, so let's do a quick overview, try and get this in 2 minutes, and then we will let you guys out of here. Okay, so start from the top and work our way down, right? We've got our HTML tag. We know that a tag either needs to be self-closing and have a slash in it, or it needs to have a closing tag, which we have all the way down here. We have our head tag. Our head tag is all the information that the page needs to work, but not the content itself. So for example, we have the title tag that sets the title over here. We also use this link tag that we got from Bootstrap. This is basically saying, hey, go get the Bootstrap CSS and pull it into our website. So when we reference that information, when we call classes and that kind of stuff, it's accessible in our own page. Then we come into the style tag. This style tag, we're only targeting columns. So we say, hey, go find any place there is a class col and put a blue border around that of 1px. Great, we're done with the head. That's all the information that the page needs to work that isn't actually content directly related. Then we come down into the body. Now we put everything in this div class container. So sometimes it's very helpful to get visual with this. So let me try and move this over a little bit. Our container is going to show up anything that is inside this container. This closing div lines up with this opening div here. That means all of the code inside of here lines up with a container in our HTML that displays over here. Okay, now we're inside that. So this word bootstrap right here is going to show up with our word bootstrap over here. Okay, now we go into this row. This row closes down here. So we know all of the content inside of it is in this row over here. How does that row show up? That row is right over here. Okay, now inside that row, we have two columns. Our first column is here, and our second column is over here. So we have our first column that shows up here, and our second column that shows up over here. And finally, inside those columns, we have the words. Those words show up here and here. Lots of great resources getting posted in the chat. I agree with all of them. Free Code Camp is great with the Cat app. Code Academy is really helpful. And we are available for one-on-ones if you need help on top of all of this. But don't panic quite yet. We've got more practice coming, right? Literally, we have covered pretty much everything that we're going to learn all the way up until week 5. Between now and week 5, all we're going to do is be getting more and more practice with this HTML. Our HTML gets more complex, but the concepts remain the same. And that's what's kind of interesting. That's what I mean by, like, if you get it, you get it. And if you're struggling with it, you're going to be struggling with it. There's this moment where all of a sudden that light bulb moment goes off where it just clicks. More practice. We've got another 3.5 weeks of practicing these exact concepts. And that's what's coming down the pipeline. That's all I've got for you guys. We will continue practicing our concepts on this tomorrow, and then we'll be diving into the weather app next. I will stick around in case there are any questions. Otherwise, enjoy what is left of your Tuesday evening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Have a great night.
Hey, Max.
Yep.
Take care.
So everything is right on my thing. I just don't have the double columns and I'm not sure where I'm wrong at in there.
Share your screen. Let's take a look, and then Rain, I'll come to you next.
Okay.
Okay, so first thing I notice is we've got an extra. Let me request remote. We've got an extra like opening and closing tag or closing arrow here. So let's get that fixed first. Okay, actually, I lied. See, in this URL, we've got bootstrap.html, but it's like this whole file path. We don't want to be using that one. We want to be using the one that the live server gives us. So we're actually going to close this one, close out of the port down here to close the live
That's
server.
what I forgot to do.
And then click on it to open it. And now we've got the URL with the numbers in it. And so that's what we want. So we've got our closing arrow for the link tag here. And then we've got this extra closing tag that we don't want.
For no reason.
So we can take that one out. And now we're going to fix this indentation a little bit. So this div is closing this column, so we can indent that over. Oh, your screen share just started to lag on me. Are you still there? Oh, I think we had an internet drop. Oh, you're back. Okay, sorry. Your internet cut out there for a second. Come on, screen share. Can you still hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me. Oh, there we go. It just caught up. Sorry. Okay. Go here. Tab that over. Take this. Tap this over. And now, if you look in our second col, we've got an extra colon in there. And believe it or not, I believe that is causing all of your issues.
Oh, okay. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, okay, so I have an extra column in there. Okay, that makes sense.
And you can see that wasn't something that like I saw in the first 5 minutes, even though I've been doing this for 15 years, right? So you get better at debugging that, but focusing in on those details and saying, all right, it's an issue with my column. So let me look at my column classes. That can sometimes help you narrow in on where the problem is.
Right. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Rain, what's up?
I don't know, back at my visual. So I'm trying to get used to nesting things into things to modify it, primarily with CSS. So with this, let's say, for instance, I want to change the color of the word bootstrap. Would I nest that at bootstrap, the title, near the title? Or would I need to put that near the div, in the div, or prior to the div?
So good question. Let me share my screen and kind of talk through that. So you have a couple options. One, we could come in here and say, hey, Bootstrap is in this div called container, right? So the easiest solution would say, hey, we could go in here and say, hey, the style of this is going to be color red and save. Well, that made our Bootstrap red, but that also made this stuff red, and we may not want that to be red. So what we could do is move this into its own p tag or its own div. Either would work. We could then take that style and put it inside the p tag and now get the exact same thing that we wanted. However, this is kind of considered messy because we have a bunch of CSS intermixed in with our HTML. And it's generally considered cleaner to either move the CSS out into its own file or to put it up in the style tag up at the top. So now that we've put this into its own P tag, I can take this P and say, hey, the color on that is going to be red, and remove that need for the style tag here. Now you're noticing over here, nothing's changing. All of these to the computer gets it. You want that Bootstrap word to be red. This is where, as developers, we start to say, all right, which one is better? It's kind of nice to have all of our styling up at the top and not have styling crowd down here. And eventually, yes. And eventually it would get to the point where this is going to get so big that we want to move it out into its own file, which is what we did in the first half of class. So the answer isn't, there's always different ways of doing it. And the computer doesn't really care. To us and to the computer, it outputs the exact same thing. But as we're going, we're going to learn, hey, what's better here? And in fact, this could even be dangerous, because at some point, what if I put a P tag that says paragraph in here? Now that's showing up in red, because what did we do? We told CSS to go find every P tag and make the color red. So from there, in order to fix that, we may say, let's add an ID onto this of like BS text. Then we could change that up here to the BS text, and now only that return red. So there's no one answer, and I can work with a team of senior developers, and I can promise you, if you gave us the exact same picture and said, go build this website, all 10 developers are going to make 10 different copies that look all exactly the same in the browser, and in the code all use different techniques. So as we're getting started, it's like the concepts that we want to make sure are clicking, right? Of, well, what if I want to just turn this text red? Well, we can't do that because it's in a container, but we didn't have this P tag before. So we've got to put that in its own little container, or its own div, its own element, that we can then go into our CSS and select to style directly.
So I would need to learn that. I need to, how can I put it? Hold on, let me think before I speak.
Yeah.
I need to specify the paragraph to know that that style only pertains to that specific line.
Correct.
By cleaning it up, and by looking at that, I now understand that. Okay, this is good.
So if you look at, this is called a selector for a reason. It's literally selecting out a piece of our HTML. But sometimes there won't be something that we can select in our CSS. So we actually have to make that in our HTML so our CSS can reach in and style it.
And just one last thing, this will also, even if I use the file and brought the file over, this would be the same concept, or is that handled differently?
What do you mean?
If I have a CSS file, I only want it to pertain to a certain part of this right
exactly
here.
The same.
Bootstrap.
Yeah,
exactly.
No difference. Whatever, we could literally take this style, like all the things between the style tag, copy and paste it into a separate CSS file. And as long as we had that link tag to that external CSS file, it would behave exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any questions, any other questions before I head out?
Okay, so my last thing was the inspect. The inspect actually goes on like Google, like when we're on Google Chrome, that's where we push inspect, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's my only question.
Yep, right click, you go down to inspect, and then this is kind of how the browser sees your code. And so it's sometimes helpful because you have the output, right, what the browser is showing, and you've got your code, but sometimes you want to know, like, well, how is the browser understanding my code? And that's what the inspect tool is good for. So like if you hover over this column, you can see where that column is. The fact that there's green on either side of it means that there's some padding built into that column. And then if you click on it, you could scroll down to the bottom and kind of see how big the padding is and play around with it from there.
Okay.
All right, this has tired me. I'm getting tongue-tied.
I would be disappointed if you aren't as tired as I am at the end of every
I'm
night.
tired. I'm tired. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
No
you. Have a
problem.
good
I'll
night,
see
you
you guys. Have a
guys.
good one.
Bye.